Hi, I'm Lindsey, and I'm talking with MedTech industry leaders on how they change lives for a better world.
The inventions and technologies are fascinating, and so are the people who work with them.
There was a period of time where I realized fundamentally my job was to go hang out with really smart people that are saving lives and then do work that would help them save more lives.
I got into the business to save lives, and it is incredibly motivating to work with people who are in that same business, saving or improving lives.
What better industry than where I get to wake up every day and just save people's lives?
These are extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, and this is The Leading Difference.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Leading Difference podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey, and I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today, Mike Knox. Mike is a stand-up comedian and author of the book Vivien's Reign about his daughter's epilepsy and the medical device that saved her life. He is a retired parole agent, and I am so excited that he is joining us today because he has a very unique take on the medical device field from a personal encounter. All right. Well, welcome, Mike. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to speak with you today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, you come to the MedTech field and to medical devices in a very kind of unique pathway, and I'm very excited to dive into that. But before we do, would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're doing today? What led you to today?
Sure. I am retired law enforcement and now I'm full-time stand-up comedian and actor, much better than law enforcement. And I have a daughter who has epilepsy. She's 17 now. She started having seizures at the age of 2. And by the age of 8, she got a vagus nerve stimulator, which basically saved her life. So it's a small implant that's like I'm not supposed to say this, but it's basically like a pacemaker, but for your brain. So it's a small generator that attaches onto your vagus nerve and sends impulses to interrupt your seizure. So she's now been seizure free for 8 years. And I go and I'm an ambassador for the company that makes this product. And I go and talk about this product, which is basically, it has saved my daughter's life. And not only that, beyond that, it's allowed her to get her life back, basically, because she was pretty much just a little zombie because she was on so much medication at the time. So really for the past 15 years, it was just my wife and I living day to day as parents, just trying, in and out of the hospital with my daughter. So now she's in a great place and that affords me the time to go out and talk.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so can we go back a little bit and talk about what life was like before this device, before you discovered this device, before all of the changes started happening for the better? But can you just paint a picture of what did daily life look like and how did that go?
It was waiting for the seizure to happen. And most of them were at night. So it would usually be my wife and I taking turns watching my daughter all night long. And she would be on medication, but she'd have breakthrough seizures. She would have partial seizures, but they would go into grand malls and we'd have to go always to the hospital because that's where the rescue medication was. And then it would be at the hospital, always confusion because the hospital that was local wasn't really trained. And we kind of found out not a lot of hospitals, emergency rooms were trained for seizures, which seizures have been around 2,000 years. So there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of not really good education. And that's where I, as a parent, thought this stuff really needs to change. So that's what my wife and I did was, started small, talking to our hospital and just trying to get a policy in place where we could, safely get my kid from here to the hospital. Then as time went by, kind of technology caught up and we were able to have a rescue medication at home. But there were times where my daughter flatlined twice. So it was very scary. And it was just like living day to day because we were in crisis mode and waiting for that next seizure to happen. It really did for us was that seizure was stalking us, always waiting. We never knew when it was going to happen. Kind of narrowed it down to it might be at night or coming out of her sleep, waking up like on the way to school, but it really held you hostage. We weren't able to go anywhere. You always had to think of where you were going to go and plan things out. And your friends and family kind of abandon you just because they don't know what's going on. They don't understand what your family's going through. And I think a lot of parents see that also as people just don't understand what it is you're going through when you have a medical problem. And so when she did get this device, that changed everything. And the number one thing that it did was it finally allowed our family to sleep, which we hadn't been doing for years. I mean, it was really same with my daughter. She wasn't able to sleep. So then she's not able to really concentrate at school. The school didn't understand. And they thought she was just being lazy rather than she has epilepsy. And so it's always there trying to advocate for your child. Still doing that, still dealing with school things where I'm having to advocate for her. And that's just what you're doing as a parent, is trying to do the best for your child.
Yeah, absolutely. Oof. Yeah. Thank you for sharing more about that and painting a picture for us. And then, so in your research and in thinking there's got to be something out there, I would imagine as a parent going, there's got to be a solution. There's got to be something out there. Did that research eventually lead you to the company that you now help speak about and whatnot?
Yes. And I always tell people this too, is don't rely 100% on the medical system, meet them halfway and do your research. Because a lot of it is, it's what I realize is just a lot of it is failure. It's constantly failing and failing. And we went to different doctors in different hospitals, and the insurance would say it doesn't cover this, but we kind of bypassed the insurance to get to the doctor that we wanted to. It took us about 5 years to get a diagnosis, to find out what was happening, to find the right doctor, because there were a lot of horrible doctors. And then you have to understand that, because I never really was in and out of hospitals, and I never really understood what the policy. Every hospital is different, every doctor is different, and different doctors don't know. We were going to doctors thinking that they knew what epilepsy was, and they didn't. They weren't going to say anything, but they were a primary doctor or they were a specialty doctor. They didn't know what epilepsy was. And so researching and finding out, and then we had read about VNS, vagus nerve stimulator, and our doctor at the time had said, no, it won't work. Well, that wasn't true, because it's worked. And a lot of it is the drive is pharmaceuticals, and you're kind of experiment. That one doctor, she was doing fine on one medication and he wanted to change it, and that caused her to have all these crazy other seizures. And you've got to let go of this kind of grudge that you have, and the kind of anger, which we did for a lot of medical. You kind of got to look positively at the ones who are helping you. I really found out that a lot of the nurses were a lot more helpful, where I always thought the doctor's the one that's going to have the knowledge. And a lot of it was the nurses that had the knowledge. Not that the doctors don't, but there were more nurses that were more helpful. And my number one thing was compassion. You as a parent coming in there wanting compassion for your kid, at least that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay, so you found this device or you found this technology and you go, okay, I think maybe this could help my child. The doctor is a little skeptical, but we don't really know the reasons behind that. Maybe they just don't have the experience to understand how it could help. And there's new technology coming out all the time. But so that happened. And then what got you to a yes, where you could actually try this and see the impact that it could have for your daughter?
A lot of it was desperation. We
Mhm.
had left one doctor after just years there and kind of figuring out he has no idea what he's doing, and we can never call him on that. Went to another doctor, and what you're doing with epilepsy is you're trying to find out where the seizure is coming from. So they do an EEG, and so they're attaching all these leads to your head. And we were in the hospital for 8 days the first time, no seizure. You're off the meds. They're trying to induce a seizure. Nothing happened. So the new doctor said, we got to do the same thing again. It's just exhausting, because you're like, I don't want to put my kid through that, but you have to. So we went through another EEG, caught a seizure, saw that they were coming from 3 different ways, because we were first looking at brain surgery, and then her seizure was coming from 3 different areas of the brain. So now you can't do that. And then that doctor showed us the vagus nerve stimulator, which at the time we had just come to my daughter having this horrible seizure in the hospital. Her recovery was really bad at the time. So I was just overwhelmed with this doctor showing me this small device that looked like a silver dollar. And it just was too unbelievable for me at the time. But I knew that we had to do something for my daughter, because it was the last resort. We didn't really we'd run out of all options. It had been years of hospitals and doctors and back and forth. And so really, to me, it was our only option. And it just seemed so unbelievable because it was such a small device. And I think a lot of it was nobody else had ever talked about it before. And so I had to go back and look and go, oh, at the time it'd been around 20 years. And then I also looked at, I was a horrible student, but I looked mathematically at, wow, this percentage of, it's not a cure, but she could have a life that's 80% better. Well, I got through college with all C's. I'll take those numbers. And so it was pretty much, at the time, it was a no-brainer, just because everything was just so horrible that it was another chance was given to us. We had run out of options. We didn't have any.
Yeah, of course. So you take this risk and you go, well, if it has the percentage potential of maybe it'll improve her life this drastically, it was worth the risk, I would imagine, from both your perspective and your daughter's perspective. And then, So you do this surgery, you've got this implant. Now, what is life like these days? Can she travel? Can she do much more than she was able to do before?
Life is great. I just want to talk about the surgery itself. That was another
Yes.
fear. I didn't want to put my daughter through the surgery. How horrible it was. It was so easy. We went in and out. It's an outpatient surgery. It took maybe about an hour. It was so simple. And a lot of it was just me as a parent being afraid. I was so afraid of everything, watching my kid go through so much that's what I tell everybody now. It was so simple because she's on her second battery because you replaced. So the first one lasted almost about 8 years. So she's on her second one. And the second time around was even simpler because now they've got, at the time we got ours, I think she was only the 8th in Los Angeles that got it. So the protocol wasn't in place. Now the protocol is in place. So they'll kind of get you in and out real quick. And they all kind of know what it is, where at the time when my daughter first had it, they didn't know what it was. So a lot of strides have taken place. And now the hospitals know exactly what to do. So it's very simple. Whereas, and I run into a lot of parents that are afraid to give the surgery and kind of all the things that go along with the surgery. And it's so simple, and nobody really knows. Now her life is absolutely wonderful. I mean, she went from not being able to keep up at school to now, shockingly, is because I was such a horrible student, gets straight A's. And wow. I mean, to me, that's the amazing part of, I really saw this device propel her, and she was learning, which she couldn't do before because she was having seizures and, she couldn't think. She had brain fog. She had all these kind of things that we all kind of take for granted that we don't really know. But that's what I mean by when she was a zombie at the age of 8, was that she just couldn't think because she was having so much brain activity from her seizures. And a lot of times she's having seizures, you couldn't even see them. Just as a parent, you would instinctively know, oh, this isn't good. I've got to get her out of these, I got to take her home, or I got to give her medication. That was another fear of mine too, was that, when she's at school or she's with, I'd come to school a couple times where she had them at school, but the school wasn't aware. I found her on the play yard. I found her in the classroom, and the school none of the schools are equipped because by law, they don't have to be. And so what I love about the vagus nerve stimulator is it's her bodyguard. It's with her 24 hours a day. It's somebody watching over her, and it allows her just to do the things that we all take for granted. And, like, she's able to go to school, and I feel comfortable now that she's a teenager, which was another thing, was she's growing up. I want her to have her independence, and now I can feel comfortable where she doesn't text me through the day because she's just a teenager, forgets that she has it. And that's the best part to me about it.
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow, that's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm curious now, so you got to a point where you saw the incredible difference it made in your daughter's life, and then of course your family's life. And you're obviously very passionate about this device itself and the company. So now you are helping to spread the word. Can you share more about your advocacy and your work for that?
I just felt nobody was there to talk to me about it. And so if there's ever any parents or kids that are looking at it, and it's just fear of the unknown. So I go and advocate and talk about this great device. I probably get 4 or 5 calls. Most people don't want to talk about it, but I probably get 4 or 5 calls a year from parents. Then they just have all sorts of curious questions. Number one, is it going to hurt? Am I going to be able to? One kid asked me the other day, am I still going to be able to ski? And I said, you're probably going to be able to ski a lot better because you're going to be able to focus on that. And I just tell them basically my story, which going back to, because it's not a cure, you have to wait. And so in the beginning, when she first got it, it was about 6 months of no seizures, which was great. But then she had about 5. But the vagus nerve stimulator comes with a magnet, and you can swipe that over your chest, and that'll stop the seizures most of the time. And so I saw that progressing. And so I was always kind of writing down stuff and seeing it progress. And it was really at the 6-month mark where we all slept through the night. And I said, oh, wow, she's sleeping. She never slept through the night before. She was always a lot of insomnia and stomach pain and just getting up through the night. So she slept like a good 12 hours. And I was like, oh, wow, that's huge. That beyond the seizures is huge. And then there was a morning where she got up, dressed herself, which she could never do, made her lunch, which she never did, made her breakfast, ate breakfast. So while my wife and I were sleeping, she did all this stuff on her own, which she could never do. You always had to tell her, like you literally had to tell her, okay, it's time to get up out of the bed. And you'd have to tell her several times. And not just being a kid, she just wasn't processing. Just like she couldn't process sarcasm or humor, which was very hard for me as a father because I wanted to joke around with my kid. And then she put together this Lego set, read the directions, which she could never do before. So you could really see like, wow, the the vagus nerve stimulator has got her basically mind on track, and she's being able to focus, which she could never do before, always distracted about everything. And then on the way to school, driving her, she was joking with me, and you could see like that spark in her eye that I had seen when she was younger, but hadn't seen in a long, probably 6 years. And so beyond the seizures, I was like, oh, wow, this is working. So it really doesn't matter if it's working 100% or not. Something is happening here, and it's for the betterment of my child. And that's what I run into also is people want that quick fix. They want 100%. They just want a cure. That's not what this is, but it's a heck of a lot better than where she was 8 years ago, almost 10 years now. That's another thing. It really flies by because she got her first one at the age of 8, and then she got her next one at 16. And that is another positive about it because life kind of stands still when you're in this crisis from anything medical. And now she's just able to live her life and be a kid. And that's the amazing part about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. You mentioned early on that something that stood out to me is it's often difficult, I think, when there's a medical diagnosis or some pressing medical issue. It makes it hard for people outside of the family to understand what's going on, and therefore they might feel uncomfortable and they're not quite sure how to offer to help or to just be there for you. And I'm curious, since you experienced some of that loneliness and distance going through this difficult time as a parent and now as an advocate, is there just some general advice you might share with people who might be in a situation where they have a family member or friend struggling with something, but they're not quite sure how to be there for that person?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing is send them a card and just let them know. Because I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, I'll just text, but I don't know what to text them. And I don't want to say, like, if there's anything I could do, because there isn't anything I could do. And that's a lot when you have, like with epilepsy, there isn't anything anybody could do. And then people, they're giving you bad advice because they see it on TV. Like I would always get advice about, have you tried smoking weed with your kid? And I'm like, she's 2. Yeah, I'm not going to smoke weed with my kid. So that's why I say a card, because then you can think about what you're going to say. And what I think is nice is send some food or something, or send a gift card, because for my wife and I, we were at home all the time because we couldn't leave. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that. Like I could not go to the store because if I leave the house, she's going to then have a seizure and I'm not going to be there for the seizure. So it was debilitating because I'm having to watch her 24 hours a day, and nobody else understood that. I just say a card so that people at least know you're thinking about them or something like that. And most people just don't do that. I mean, I think people are thinking that people are going to, I think you see on TV shows, people rally behind you or whatever. They don't. I mean, most people are living their life. And for you as the person that's sick or with the family that's sick, just know that the people still love you and they care about you. They're just doing their own thing. But so you have to then understand that and not be upset with them. I'm not upset with my family my family and friends that just abandoned me. You know, I think that's life also. It's like, you have to repeat yourself over and over again when you're sick or have a sick kid too. And you'll hear the same stuff like, oh, I didn't know your kid was sick, even though you told them 1,000 times. You know, oh, I never knew she had epilepsy. And I just think that's human being. I think you have to have the compassion for other people also. And that's just, I think you go through all those phases in the beginning. You're going through all that grief and regret and all that stuff. And you just have to kind of let it go because people don't know how to deal with it. Nor did I as a parent. I had no idea. So I had that crash course in dealing with it. But I think we as a family came out the other side of it. So they're very thankful of the outcome. And all I have is gratitude for where we are now. Very thankful that she's in a great place.
Yeah. And now I'm a little curious. So coming back to you and your story and your career trajectory, which sounds like it's had some fun twists and turns in it over the years. But so how has this experience affected both your professional life when you were in law enforcement and then now as a comedian? Are you able to use some of that platform to help even sort of process and then maybe inspire or educate other people through that?
Yeah. And I look at it like it's like with my comedy, I use the epilepsy. It's not making fun of epilepsy. It's informing. And I have people that come up to me and talk to me. Hey, I have epilepsy. I'm so glad you talked about this because there's such a stigma. And I meet so many people, and I'm going to do it again next week, where they didn't want to come because they're afraid, they're getting bullied. They don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to approach it. A lot of families look down on it. There is a huge stigma. For some reason, they're embarrassed that their family member has it or their child or whatever it is. And I really think that starts with state laws. So there was a law that was just passed in California where the schools have to identify seizures and everybody needs to be trained, and that passed. And that took about 5 years, and I worked on that. And that's where it starts with trying to educate people and starting with that one-on-one. going and talking about it. But I do believe that only laws are going to change things and change people's mind. There's a lot of fake seizure videos that are on YouTube, a lot on TikTok under the guise of comedy. And I don't agree with that. I don't think it's comedy at all. It's not something that I do. And that's something that I try to educate people on also is it's not funny. There's people that are dying from epilepsy. And so just getting out there and talking to people, when I get that information, I just write that down and categorize it and see where the problems are. And it all goes back to just misinformation and people not talking about it. And that goes back to the funding and how the world works. Can people make money out of this? That's the only way that they look at it. If I had tons of money, I think you could solve it a lot quicker. I just take it day by day and who I can talk to and who I can show compassion to, again, because I think that's what people are looking for. And people just want a voice. They want somebody to talk to and listen to other people. That's kind of how I approach it also is listening to other people's stories because they feel unheard. And I think that's important. And through my older jobs and this job, and I think all you can kind of do is laugh at it because it gets so overwhelming and so crazy. And you can't force people to see the way that you see things. So you kind of just got to laugh at it. And I think that's healing in a way to a lot of people also, and especially with comedy. I mean, people come there, they know why they're coming there. They're coming there to laugh. A lot of it is they're coming from their horrible life, coming there for an hour or two to get away from it all. So I think it is beneficial to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is your hope for the future or your excitement for the future as things continue to progress and more awareness is in place, more legislation to help with responses to this kind of situation? What are you looking forward to or potentially excited about?
So I just look forward to a day where I don't have to do this anymore. It's going to happen, but I do see a lot of great technology and I see a lot of great strides within the last 5 to 10 years in the medical field with medical devices. And that's what I hope for. I hope for something like with the vagus nerve stimulator, they're looking at having a rechargeable battery, not having to replace the battery. And that's what I hope for. And I hope for that I never have to hear anything about seizures or epilepsy. I know that's not going to happen, but for my daughter and everybody else, I would love to find a cure for it. And anybody that has to deal with any kind of medical advice, hopefully, we can put more funding into it and have more cures. And I think we are at a great time for so much success we're living longer, we're living better. These next couple of generations my mom's 88. People are living a lot longer and a lot healthier. And so I guess if I have to be positive, that's what I'm positive about.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's taking the challenge with the opportunity and saying, okay, let's see what happens from it. So, it's a step in the right direction for sure. All right. So pivoting the conversation just for fun. Imagine that you were to be offered $1 million to teach a masterclass on anything you want. It could be something that you've been working on from your career so far, so a skill set you've developed over time, but it could be completely unrelated. What would you choose to teach and why?
It would have to be comedy because I've done so much comedy for free. I think that I can understand to teach that to other people and to tell them kind of all the traps of comedy. And it is just comedy is consistency. It's getting your 5 minutes is really 4 minutes because you're going to have about a minute of laughter if you're funny or not, but getting consistent and embracing the failure of it. And to me, those are the components of comedy because you've got to stand up there. A lot of it is you got to stand up there and embrace the darkness of being up on stage, which a lot of people don't want to do. And then you've got your material and you've got to be able to you've got to get new material and carry that material. So what I've seen, if you can get past that first 5 minutes and get 10 minutes and 15 minutes and so on, you're going to be okay. So if I were to get $1 million, I think more the masterclass that I could teach.
I love it. Okay, awesome. And how do you wish to be remembered after you leave this world?
To me, it's just that I did good. I think that to me, that's important. Do good and be good because we see so much negativity all the time. And we see so many people that it's like, I scammed this person out of that, but they deserved it. And there's kind of like no moral compass. So when I worked in law enforcement before, people that you didn't even think that you touched their lives at all would say, hey, thank you. You made me recognize something different. And I think that's what life is all about. You've changed somebody's life or done some sort of kindness. It doesn't even matter. I think that's what a lot of it is, these little things in life where you didn't even know that you did something to somebody. And it's that spider web of life where your life intertwined with somebody. You weren't even aware of what you did, but that impacted that person's life so much. And I think that's what we're here for, is you're always trying to help other people. I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. And then final question. What is one thing that makes you smile every time you see or think about it?
Definitely seeing the vagus nerve stimulator working, anything with my daughter. I think being in crisis for so long, and just like yesterday, my daughter made cinnamon rolls. She likes to bake. So watching her make something from scratch and then having her happy and excited that she made something, that to me is happy. Well, that always makes me smile. So it is those little things that always make me smile.
I love that. Excellent. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. Mike, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate your commitment to sharing the word and being a positive helper in this situation. So if folks would want to get in contact with you, maybe because they have some questions or whatnot, or they want to follow your work, how could they do that?
Sure. On all platforms, on Mike Knox, at Mike Knox Comedy, or I have a website, mikeknox.com.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you so much again for your time today. We are so honored to be making a donation on your behalf as a thank you for your time today to Save the Children, which works to end the cycle of poverty by ensuring communities have the resources to provide children with a healthy, educational, and safe environment. So thank you so much for choosing that charity to support. And also, thank you for continuing to work to change lives for a better world.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, absolutely. And thank you also to our listeners for tuning in. And if you're feeling as inspired as I am at the moment, I would love if you would share this episode with a colleague or two, and we will catch you next time.
The Leading Difference is brought to you by Velentium. Velentium is a full-service CDMO with 100% in-house capability to design, develop, and manufacture medical devices, from Class 2 wearables to Class 3 active implantable medical devices. Velentium specializes in active implantables, leads, programmers, and accessories across a wide range of indications, such as neuromodulation, deep brain stimulation, cardiac management, and diabetes management. Velentium's core competencies include electrical, firmware, and mechanical design, mobile apps, embedded cybersecurity, human factors and usability, automated test systems, systems engineering, and contract manufacturing. Velentium works with clients worldwide, from startups seeking funding to established Fortune 100 companies. Visit Velentium.com to explore your next step in medical device development.
And we just wish you the most continued success as you work to change lives for a better world.